Well, guys, I haven't kept up with all of citizencon so far. I have watched a little bit of it, but I don't know, all the Reddit posts and everything else that we've put over the last few months or whatever so far from what I've seen have been fairly accurate. I mean, no one really was on board with what we were saying um, on Reddit and stuff, so talked about like some animals and variants of animals and stuff in different biomes and all that, which I just saw that they're showing off in citizencon now. Planetary tech with the Genesis system, which when people were talking about server meshing and stuff coming, everyone was super hyped with server meshing, and I posted online. I've backed multiple games. Server meshing's, great and all, but win or lose with server meshing, the planetary tech is what's important because that's what you need to build the game and the systems that's required to have, 100 systems in the game. So we got some planetary tech, we got animal tech. The cloth tech stuff was basically, cloth and armor mixtures, which I was talking about before with people. The the stuff that I talked with people online during streams with is Star Citizen gonna become more because it's like an R-rated game and it's a very rare thing to have, especially with MMOs. How sci-fi are they gonna go with the game? So StarCraft-esque, um, you know, sci-fi horror because we know that they like the Battlefield games. We know that they liked the Alien. We know that they're nerds for sci-fi. So I expected some aliens, some creatures, some monsters to show up. And although I haven't finished watching day one yet, when they're talking about the Valacar and the variants of the Valacar, and they start showing um, the underground cave variant of the Valacar, which has design elements that basically resemble some of the underground snake looking things from the Alien movies, and like Prometheus and stuff. So, or maybe even like partially like the creatures on that last Riddick movie. I forgot what I think it was just called Riddick. It's basically that remake of like Pitch Black when Riddick Vin Diesel bought the rights to the movie and remade the next one, which is weird. But I mean, so far we've pretty much hit most of the topics throughout the year on what was coming. And I am kind of excited to see what keeps going now. I think I don't know if they already showed who the legendary person from CitizenCon's past was. Um, I think they said something about a person that was the Carrick pilot. And if that's true, then I guess that would make sense as well because it has to deal a lot with exploration. With the Carrick and everything that they're showing is a big, big boon to exploration in general. And honestly, from what I'm seeing at the moment, this is really getting me to double down on exploration as a gameplay, which a lot of people just, they haven't really did. Um, but my whole ship fleet design is based on ground combat and exploration, and that's been the goal from for a while. I assumed that was going to be the major thing that would be super interesting, and right now, just with the Valacar alone, that's a lot of possibility, and if that's coming with 4.0 Pyro, like not only finding that that'd be a big org event. Finding, preparing for, fighting the Valacar, but also you're gonna have to fight off pirates because they're gonna be coming after you, and also probably fighting Valacars and stuff as well. So basically, having a huge org battle with NPC creatures on a planet and trying to not draw attention to yourself from enemy ships is going to be a big deal. And this is also having me double down with things like the Kraken, because you're going to need places for people to rearm repair. You're going to need things for people to use against these creatures, and also the arrow. It's making me go back more into the arrow and all of that. The plans that we've had, having smaller fighters instead of the bigger fighters for planetary combat, from all the benefits that we had before, but also because the arrow is smaller, it's more nimble. It's going to be more of a high skill ceiling fighter jet that's capable of help dealing with some of these bigger creatures, it seems like. But you also got to think maybe unless certain explosives and stuff impact the drops that come from creatures, um, you could just hit these things with like size 9 torps or bomb runs, or when the Polaris comes, you're gonna hit it with a size 10 torp, and probably like one tap it. So there are some potential options here, depending on how much value these creatures have. But this also is pushing into why I was saying that the Aquila is the best Connie, and nobody was really on board with that. Um, but it's gonna be the best Connie unless they change things, because the Taurus and the Andromeda just don't really have the fuel capacity to compete with an Aquila over a planetary surface, with hydrogen fuel, even if the quantum is the same. And the Taurus, it can hold more cargo, which is going to be good, but when you have a big fleet, you don't need cargo space really, because you have a lot of cargo space. Like the Kraken has 3,000 something cargo space. If you think you need more cargo, there's a problem there. But we have seen they also talk about planets degrading buildings and stuff, which can probably degrade ships. But it's splitting my need for a Pioneer. I partially still kind of want a Pioneer to be able to build ground bases on the surface and to build refineries and manufacturing plants on the surface. If you could potentially build like ballistic ammo or just mining more resources out of the ground. But when it comes to exploration, I don't necessarily need ground structures, and we still don't know what buildings these ground vehicle could potentially do when you're actually building ground bases, because they had small, medium, large, and extra large buildings. Pioneer can build all of them up to extra large, and it has 600 SCU of storage space. But a Liberator also has 600 SCU of storage space. And if you can buy mining plants and power plants and all of that and store it in the same amount of space on a Liberator, for instance, and transport it and then just unload one or two ground vehicles, say you can build medium buildings with the ground vehicle, do you really need more or less for that? Like, I'm perfectly fine with medium refineries and medium mining lasers if that's really what I have to do. And depending on how many materials that you need to build a building, I could see like an extra large mining laser being more expensive, like per cost, like per part to build, and being more of a stay in one place, mine everything thing. And then the smaller mining lasers, like medium and small size, if they do have those, um, being more of like you pick them up, you put them down, you pick them up, you move them down. Mass production just all over. Maybe not the most efficient, but you're able to kind of produce what you need to do and get out of there. And if that's the case, then I'm on board with it. But we're already we're already looking into the more exploration, boys. And I like the idea of exploration. And right now, as they've showed in the CitizenCon, it looks to be the best loop, I think, for myself. Probably the most interesting, the most dangerous. And it's the same thing with why I want armor and stuff on my ships. And when people say that exploration ships aren't combat ships, that why I say that they're wrong, because like people said the Carrack doesn't need size 5 guns, even though the Redeemer had size 5 guns, the Odyssey has size 5 guns, the Connie has size 5 guns, the Corsair has size 5 guns. The Carrack has size 4 right now, and it needs size 5s to be able to defend against all the other exploration ships that there are, because otherwise they're going to have a longer range and pick it down. But also because it's going to have to deal with giant Valacar worms and crap on the surface. So these are things that people aren't really considering, I think, a lot. And also, when it comes to ground vehicles and all of that, the Carrack is going to be probably one of the best ships to deal with a lot of, like, I ain't going to say the best ship, but it's going to have the ability, say, for the Valacar, to just drop down, land, unload 8 ground vehicles, and then go right into war with whatever's on the ground there with the Valacar. And can one Carrack and 8 ground vehicles take down a Valacar? I have no idea. But you also have the Pisces Expedition. And let's just say for a simple exploration group, you're going to bring one Carrack and one Liberator. Then you potentially have 8 people in the ship, 16 people in the Liberator, secondary crew, let's say 4 Pisces, 8 plus ground vehicles, whatever else that you need setting there on the ground, and then the Carrack's main gun firing battery hitting down. And since these are kind of like, I think it's kind of split because on one hand, exploration wise, you have to deal with these creatures and get their materials, which seems like they'd be the most valuable because they're the hardest to find. But then they've also talked about biomes changing and stuff, um, which makes me wonder if you can make animals go extinct on a planet or not. But then also, if you're mining, you also have to contend with these same ground creatures. So I could see, you know, mining materials and stuff being a lot more valuable as well around these areas if you also have to contend with the same creatures. So we'll have to see how that works out. But the same thing goes with like salvage. If you're going and they have wreck sites and stuff like the Beagle carriers and all that, and these sandworms could potentially be around there. And they've already talked about how they want to make ground vehicles more important in the game and make you use them so you can't just fly everywhere. Well, that makes ground exploration, ground traversal for all the game loops even that much more difficult, even that much more important when it comes down to things. So having spares, having the ability to move multiple vehicles around on the ground seems like it's going to be a very good deal. And then, you know, it's going to help you with all your gameplay loops. It's going to help you with your exploration. It's going to help you in PvP potentially, ground-based assaults. So it's going to be a good time. If we don't do a Pioneer also, we could grab another Carrack, which I'm still kind of on board with. As much as I would like a second Liberator, I don't think I necessarily need one. But 2 Carracks would give me 16 potential ground vehicles. It gives you a replacement if one Carrack goes down. Expands your exploration range, expands your drone capacities, gives you secondary options for that ship in the game. And then if we don't do the Tauruses, we could potentially have at least 2 Aquila, if not 4 Aquila, and our Terrapin. So you're already looking at, 4, 5 to 9 exploration ships, um, which is a lot of potential, a lot of ground that you could cover with how much that they're saying that these locations are going to be around. And I like the idea of exploration a little bit more than just looting or just like, you know, uh, ground base. Um, I think that we can put down the foundations for finding and helping people build these ground-based operations and stuff. We can provide support and protection for them. We could potentially help them farm items. And I also want to farm items on planetary surfaces. But uh, if we can just make the money to buy like a Pioneer or something in game and then start producing ground buildings, maybe that would make more sense. I don't really know. As long as we can attack and defend things on the ground, that's the main thing. But The Kraken in this situation just seems like a very, very good ship to have for these sort of events. And also with the armor systems and stuff coming in, and even just the weaponry in general, the fact that like the Carrack and the Kraken both have top decks, which no one really talks about that much besides the fact that you can like land ships on them. A top deck is very, very versatile when you look at the weapons you can have in the game. You're talking about sniper rifles, rocket launchers, rail cannons, all of that, and also having a defensible position to fire them off of is kind of a big deal. Like theoretically, on the character, you could have any number of people standing on top of that ship while you like fly into combat or anything else with like railguns, which is a huge boon potentially in a combat situation or a ground-based situation as well. So, and then adding on top of that, since we've been thinking more and more about the anvil arrow, and the arrow can fit inside of the bay for a Carrack, but it can't close the door on the arrow. But if it can fill up inside of that Carrack, then having two Carracks can also extend the range of your basically your arrow fighters that are on top of your Kraken in multiple areas on a planet, or you can do a two Carrack chain for the arrows to go and refill as they go to a combat situation. And then if you have like a Vulcan on top of that, you could go Vulcan, Carrack, Carrack, boom, 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 and then when your fighters need to like go and repair or whatever, they go back to the Vulcan. So number of things. That's all I really wanted to say right now. I'm about to go back and do some